Greetings. Welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. I realize it's Sunday afternoon. It's a lovely day here. I don't know about other places in the world, but maybe you're all enjoying the lovely day. But greetings. Surprise live streams. That's my new bag. Come on in. It has turned out to be a lovely day in Los Angeles, at least for today. So, I'm enjoying that. Wanted to cover a couple of things. I'm not going to be very long in this video. This will be one of those relatively short ones. What's up, the dude? How you doing? Greetings. Also, remember, guys, I'll probably say this just in time for my lunch break. Yes. Good timing. I'll probably say this again at the end of the video. Please remember to make sure that you are still subscribed. Every single time I do a video or upload a video, they kick like 2 or 3 or 4 people off my subscriber list. So, yeah, just, you really got to check on that because they like to just kick people off my subscriber list. That's what they like to do. The powers that watch over the YouTube. But let me get into, I know you can hear me, so that's good. I also know that you can hear me in stereo, so that's also good. Let me get into this storm news. I know this has actually been ongoing for a couple days, but this is from today. Storm Dennis strikes UK, sparking flood warnings and evacuations. The UK receiving more than their fair share of heavy rains this year. Over the last year, this seems to be a thing. It seems to be a regular thing that's happening on a regular basis in the UK. The UK has been battered by gale force winds and heavy rains for the second weekend in a row as a cluster of storms continues to cross the Atlantic. Storm Dennis has seen flood warnings across large parts of the country as the storm picked up Saturday and lasted into Sunday. And a few of the UK viewers have been commenting on this. Hope you all are okay or faring all right. There were wind gusts as high as 91 miles per hour, 146 kilometers per hour, and more than half a month's worth of rainfall in some areas, according to a tweet from the Met Office. More heavy rain and very strong winds are forecast through Sunday, said the UK's official weather forecaster. By Sunday morning, there were 198 flood warnings in place across the country, reports PA Media, which mean immediate action must be taken. There were also a further 326 flood alerts, which warn the public to be prepared. South Wales is one of the worst hit areas, and the situation is said to be life-threatening. The Met Office has issued a red warning after a heavy rainfall raised the risk of flooding. The forecast is for the very significant levels of rain, especially in the eastern valleys of South Wales, said Jeremy, head of flood and incident risk management for Natural Resources Wales. Impacts could be severe overnight, and everyone should take the warnings extremely seriously. High winds are also possible on Sunday in Belgium, Denmark, France, and Germany. There go those high winds again. Last weekend, Storm Ciara caused hundreds of flights across Europe to be canceled, with 2 of Europe's busiest airports, Frankfurt, Germany, and Amsterdam, Netherlands, each grounding more than 100 flights due to the storm. Again, heavy storm activity, wind activity. Could it be climate change related? We'll all just take a guess. Considering this is probably abnormal, this many storms, this close together, bringing this much rainfall, happening at this concentration all over the planet, I would Venture to guess that it's probably climate change related. Basil Peterson, how you doing? Diana, how you doing? Poppy Davis. Creative experiments. First Australia, now UK, then USA. Denial will continue. Cindy Seeley, how you doing? You have a good point, says, I'm eating tofu, homemade. Nice. I haven't had homemade tofu yet. My sister made some, but I didn't get any of the homemade tofu, and I really wanted some. Anthony Gonzalez Gelbert, Kevin, you are doing an excellent job. Keep up the great work on behalf of all the people of good will. Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate you. D Truth. I am in Cardiff, South Wales, UK. It's pretty bad here. I'm sorry to hear that, D Truth. Please hold tight, hang tight. Hope you can ride it out. Poppy Davis says, I feel like this is my only sane place. Thank you, Poppy. I feel that way too. That's why I do this channel, so that I can talk to people of like mind, people that understand. I mean, there are other people in my life that understand, but it's just a difficult conversation to have. And it's not one that you can kind of have all the time, right? You can bring it up once in a while, but most of the time it's a conversation killer. Here it is the conversation starter. Creative Experiment says it's not a natural disaster, it's man-made disaster. Cindy Seeley, oops, faster than expected, more and faster. Mostafa Agai, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I am from Iran, and we had record precipitation this month. Yes, it's happening all over the planet. Australia, UK, Middle East, South America, in the United States, in Canada. Record precipitation causing flood warnings, flash floods, people to be stranded. Where else? New Zealand. Am I missing anything? I don't have the article pulled up, but I saw that there was yet again another Antarctic high temperature reading that topped the last one we talked about. So 3 high temperature readings in succession in 1 week. That's not good. So I think they got up into the 70s, if I am not mistaken. Something like 72 degrees or something like that. Basil Peterson says it was minus 10 degrees yesterday. Today it was 40. That has been the roller coaster all winter here in the Finger Lakes, New York. Yeah, honestly, it's been a little weird here because every single night we have pretty low temperatures, getting into the low 40s, almost into the 30s, which is fairly low for Southern California, even in the winter. And then we get pretty warm during the day. It's like up into the 70s. So it's just every single day it's the same thing. We get very cold at night and very warm during the day. We do live in a desert, so that is pretty typical desert weather. Cold nights, hot days. But it seems to be a thing. Lady Ella says, big storm last night blew my potted trees over. Big puddle out the back. Shower glugging downstairs. Still got electricity, UK, South UK. Stay safe, Lady Ella, please. Steve Beveridge. Yep, extremes. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? So I'm going to quickly move on because I want to keep this somewhat short. Quickly, I may do another video on this, or I may just link this video, but somebody sent me a video about biofabrication. It's a TED Talk by a woman named Suzanne Lee. And this is very interesting. She's talking about making clothes and other things out of organisms, things that are grown. Has anybody read the book by Octavia Butler called Xenogenesis? It's a huge book. It's also an excellent book. It's still one of my favorite books ever. I talk about it occasionally on this channel, but it's a book about how the human race annihilates themselves in a nuclear war, and aliens come and rescue the survivors. bring them back to their ship, and keep them alive while they go and regenerate life on Earth. It's a pretty awesome story, but the really awesome part of the story is that they biofabricate like their ship. They don't make their ship. They don't build their spaceship. They grow their spaceship. And this is a really interesting concept. That was the first time I'd ever even considered the concept of growing things as a technology. Anyways, she talks about how they can make bricks with biofabrication. And the upshot of all of this is that all the things that are made consume carbon or trap carbon. They are carbon sink. So we could make things with biofabrication. They become carbon sinks. My only, I guess, problem with this or question about this is how does this technology turn into, a way to continue 8 billion people sucking the resources out of the planet? What's the ramifications of that? I don't know. But I'm going to link this video if you guys want to watch it. It's extremely interesting. Is it, the answer to our problems? Probably not. Is it an answer of many? Probably one answer of many. That could... Well, so what she's talking about, you guys are... Poppy Davis says cotton is grown. D-Truth, hemp is good for making clothes. Yes, but the process of making the... And I was talking about this yesterday in the video about Fashion Week, that the process of making textiles is extremely destructive. It's environmentally destructive. The entire process, and the inks, generally are toxic, et cetera, et cetera. It's just the whole process of making clothes and fashion and shoes, whatever. It's very destructive. People are trying to change that. I'm seeing a lot more like vegan shoe wear and vegan clothing. They still have like rubber involved, and there's still things that are going on that are not necessarily good for the planet. She's talking about making the fabrics themselves using like I don't have the exact wording or the exact technology down, but using enzymes or using things that kind of grow, and it's kind of like what we were talking about when I was reading the George Monbiot article about ferming, which is making food out of bacteria, fermenting. So the process is about bacteria growing and making these things that we end up with, the final product. I'm not really being very eloquent about how I'm explaining it, so I only watched the video once. It's just very interesting. I'll link it below if you guys want to watch it. And I might bring it back and do another video about just this idea, because it's an interesting one to me, and it's an interesting idea to me. Again, is it an answer? I don't know. You have a good point. Says rubber is sustainable. Is it? I don't know if it's something about the making of rubber. I think is toxic, if I'm correct. Petroleum rubber, yes, it's an issue. Yeah, but then if you're making things out of actual rubber trees or rubber that you get from trees, I think that's not very sustainable or not very good. Poppy Davis, like growing a heart. Exactly. You need to watch it. Yes, I will link it. Anyways, I didn't want to stay too long on that. I wanted to move on to this article from The Guardian. The only uncertainty is how long will last a worst case scenario for the climate in 2050. The Future We Choose is a new book by architects of the Paris Climate Accords. Offers two contrasting visions of how the world might look in 30 years. Read the best case scenario here. So this is one article. This is the worst case scenario. There's the best case scenario. I'll read that in the next video. Let me just go ahead and open that so I don't forget, because I'll probably forget. Christiana Figueres, author. This is the decade we are the generation. It is 2050, beyond the emissions reductions registered in 2015, No further efforts were made to control emissions. We are heading for a world that will be more than 3°C warmer by 2100. Go ahead, pause for a chuckle. If we're only 3°C by 2100, it will be a lucky, happy, lovely day. That will be a day for dancing in the streets because it's not going to be 3°C by 2100. The first thing that hits you is the air. In many places around the world, the air is hot, heavy, and depending on the day, clogged with particulate pollution. Your eyes often water, your cough never seems to disappear. You think about some countries in Asia where, out of consideration, sick people used to wear white masks to protect others from airborne infection. Now you often wear a mask to protect yourself from air pollution. Don't people already do that? They actually already do that, especially in the Far East. You can no longer simply walk out your front door and breathe fresh air. That's already a thing that already exists in the Far East. So this is not a future scenario. This is a current scenario. There might not be any. Before opening doors or windows in the morning, you check your phone to see what the air quality will be. Again, that's a current scenario. Few people work outdoors. Even indoors, the air can taste slightly acidic, sometimes making you feel nauseated. The last coal furnaces closed 10 years ago, but that hasn't made much difference in air quality around the world because you are still breathing dangerous exhaust fumes from millions of cars and buses everywhere. Our world is getting hotter. Over the next 2 decades, projections tell us that temperatures in some areas of the globe will rise even higher, an irreversible development now utterly beyond our control. Some think that is already the current status of our situation. Oceans, forests, plants, trees, and soil had for many years absorbed half the carbon dioxide we spewed out. Now there are few forests left, most of them either logged or consumed by wildfire, and the permafrost is belching greenhouse gases into an already overburdened atmosphere. The increasing heat of the earth is suffocating us, and in 5 to 10 years, vast swaths of the planet will be increasingly inhospitable to humans. We don't know how hospitable the arid regions of Australia, South Africa, and the western United States will be by 2100. No one knows what the future holds for their children and grandchildren. Tipping point after tipping point is being reached, casting doubt on the form of future civilization. Some say that humans will be cast to the winds, again gathering in small tribes, hunkered down and living on whatever patch of land might sustain them. More moisture in the air and higher sea surface temperatures have caused a surge in extreme hurricanes and tropical storms. Recently, coastal cities in Bangladesh, Mexico, the United States, and elsewhere have suffered brutal infrastructure destruction and extreme flooding, killing many thousands and displacing millions. This happens with increasing frequency now every day because of rising water levels. Some part of the world must evacuate to higher ground. Again, already a current scenario, but just not as common as it will be in the future. Every day, the news shows images of mothers with babies strapped to their backs, wading through floodwaters and homes ripped apart by vicious currents that resemble mountain rivers. Already a current situation. News stories tell of people living in houses with water up to their ankles because they have nowhere else to go, their children coughing and wheezing because of the mold growing in their beds. Insurance companies declaring bankruptcy, leaving survivors without resources to rebuild their lives. Contaminated water supplies, sea salt intrusions, and agricultural runoff are the order of the day because multiple disasters are often happening simultaneously. It can take weeks or even months for basic food and water relief to reach areas pummeled by extreme floods. Disease such as malaria, dengue, cholera, respiratory illnesses, and malnutrition are rampant. You try not to think about the 2 billion people who live in the hottest parts of the world where, for upwards of 45 days per year, temperatures skyrocket to 60 C or 140 Fahrenheit, a point at which the human body cannot be outside for longer than about 6 hours. 6 hours? I would think it would be much less than that because it loses the ability to cool itself down. Places such as central India are becoming increasingly challenging to inhabit. Mass migrations lead to less hot rural areas are beset by a host of refugee problems, civil unrest, and bloodshed over diminished water availability. Food production swings wildly from month to month, season to season, depending on where you live. More people are starving than ever before. Climate zones have shifted, so some new areas have become available for agriculture, Alaska, the Arctic, while others have dried up, Mexico, California. Still others are unstable because of the extreme heat. Never mind flooding, wildfire, and tornadoes. This makes the food supply in general highly unpredictable. Global trade has slowed as countries seek to hold on to their own resources. Countries with enough food are resolute about holding on to it indeed. As a result, food riots, coups, and civil wars are throwing the world's most vulnerable from the frying pan into the fire. As developed countries seek to seal their borders from mass migration, they too feel the consequences. Most countries' armies are now just highly militarized border patrols. Some countries are letting people in, but only under conditions approaching indentured servitude. Those living within stable countries may be physically safe, yes, but the psychological toll is mounting. With each new tipping point passed, they feel hope slipping away. There is no chance of stopping the runaway warming of our planet, and no doubt we are slowly but surely heading towards some kind of collapse, and not just because it's too hot. Melting permafrost is also releasing ancient microbes that today's humans have never been exposed to, and as a result have no resistance to. Diseases spread by mosquitoes and ticks are rampant as these species flourish in the changed climate, spreading to previously safe parts of the planet, increasingly overwhelming us. Worse still, the public health crisis of antibiotic resistance has only intensified. As the population has grown denser in inhabitable areas and temperatures continue to rise. The demise of the human species is being discussed more and more. Already currently happening. For many, the only uncertainty is how long will last. Already currently happening. How many more generations will see the light of day? Suicides are the most obvious manifestation of the prevailing despair. There are other indications of sense of bottomless loss, unbearable guilt, and fierce resentment at previous generations who didn't do what was necessary to ward off this unstoppable calamity. This the most likely scenario, considering that we are not. We're doing some things, but those things are incredibly weak and soft in comparison to the destruction that we are exhibiting on the planet. Obviously, emissions rising, population still rising, forest destruction still happening, rising, ocean destruction rising, all these things getting worse. So we are, we're not going in the right direction. Do we have time? I don't know. We still have a functioning society. We still have a functioning civilization. So now would probably be the time to try and do something about this. If we, if the universe grants us, some kind of plateau, some kind of hiatus, some kind of lucky couple of 5 or 6 or 10 year window that we can actually do something, dramatic about this. Will we do it? I don't know. TCR Galaxy says, I would, but the lack of a disasters here is allowing for an abundance of growth. Plague state in full swing. Henry Holt, TCR, don't tell them, just do it. Build independent. We are in my disaster-ravaged community. Wade in says, better late than never, except for climate. Henry Holt says, tourism is over. Build food forests and independent communities. Henry, how you doing? I know you're faring some rough times. Hang in there, brother. Noel Wilson, all we have to do to ensure the worst case scenario is nothing. Exactly. Do nothing. Or just say it's already over and just, bow out. Business as usual puts us all in the soup, a hot soup. Indeed. I mean, we can all understand that the situation is dire. We can all understand that, the proximity of saving ourselves is probably, not within reach. That doesn't mean that we still shouldn't try. Creative experiments. Instead, we pour money into new nuclear weapons. So, for those in places or countries or situations or communities where you can do so, do what you can locally, do what you can nationally, do what you can globally. Awareness is part of doing what you can. And with that, I'm going to leave you with, more dire news. For the United States, Trump declares war on hardworking Americans with new budget requests. So Trump has, proposed a new budget, which, of course, we've been pumping more money into the military, buying new nuclear weapons, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to do this on the backs of the poor and the less fortunate, because we're going to cut Medicare, Social Security, and food stamps. Imagine this scene: acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney and acting OMB Director Russ Vought working together to assemble President Trump's fiscal year 2021 budget request. The red pen comes out, slashing domestic spending. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo joins to gut the international affairs functions of his own department. Senior advisor Stephen Miller injects anti-immigrant policies for good measure. What would this nightmarish budget request look like? Well, it's the one that was proposed, probably a lot like the actual proposal released by the White House on Monday, declaring a war on hardworking Americans littered with misplaced priorities and callous cuts unsuccessfully pursued in past requests. At a time when many working families face challenges like stagnant wages and rising healthcare costs and struggle to get ahead under this administration, the president's budget request would take our country in the wrong direction. Again, also, on top of the fact that he's slashing the budget for any environmental agencies and, these gutting environmental protections hand over fist. Last year, the Appropriations Committee that I led worked with our colleagues in Congress and a president to enact a bipartisan budget agreement that raised unworkable budget caps for fiscal year 2020 and 21. These higher discretionary spending levels made it possible for Congress to responsibly fund the federal government and provide greater investments in the needs and priorities of American families and communities. Instead of adhering to this bipartisan spending framework, which President Trump himself signed into law, the president's budget request backtracks on the agreed-to funding levels. Proposing only $590 billion in non-defense discretionary spending for fiscal year 2021, the president's request cuts $44.5 billion, or 7%, from the level in the bipartisan budget agreement. When you consider agreed upon offsets, the president's proposed cut for non-defense spending is even larger, $50.7 billion, or 7.8% from the agreement. It cuts life-saving medical research programs at the National Institute of Health, reduces funding for the Centers of Disease Control, eliminates the Community Development Block Grant, making it harder for local governments to address needs like safe housing, economic opportunities, and public facility improvements. The list goes on. President continues to fixate on his wasteful border wall, requesting $2 billion from American taxpayers. Good Lord. And for the first time in more than 20 years, we appropriated funding for gun violence prevention research. Yeah, so, Trump campaigned on promises to middle Americans, and he just keeps on breaking those promises. How regular middle-class Americans believe that the economy is booming and everything is fine, while, hundreds of thousands of people are sleeping on the street. And, I just saw that there was a huge jobs revision. They revised the job gains down 500,000. So, oops, not so good. Anyways, Trump proving, again, just a horrible person for the country and for the economy and for the environment. And hopefully he will be gone by the end of the year. That would be really good. Really, really good. If I'm talking about politics too much, it's because I want to get Trump out of office, and I need it to be a person that cares about the climate. I need it to be a person that cares about people, not going with the Corporate Dem or Bloomberg options, no thank you. Anyways, Noel Wilson, U.S. turning into Soylent Green just in time for 2022. Void, yes, indeed. Trump is part of all of that. Poppy Davis, the U.S. is like a huge prepper compound. Indeed. Reduce funding for the CDC. Good timing. Echoes of not. Thank you. All right, guys, I've got to go. I've got to take off. I want to keep this video short. Thank you for jumping on with me. I appreciate you. And what was I going to say? Again, remember if remember to make sure that you're still subscribed to the channel. If you would like to support this channel, the links will be below. If you would like to support my new record, the link will be below. All that good stuff. Thank you so much for watching and being here. I will see you on the next one tomorrow. Peace.